Welcome to the Metal Crafter. In this video we'll cover the last option of our mold making series, which is rubber mold. We will go over the tools that we need to use, we're going to prepare our original piece, and then we're going to cover both molding and unmolding. Let's hit the table. Alright, let's go over the items we need for this mold. We have the rubber or component A, an accelerant or component B, a syringe to add the component B, some plastic cups where to mix the ingredients, a digital scale to measure our components, a pair of plastic gloves for protection, some popsicle sticks to help us with the mix and with the frame, some plastic sheets or parchment paper, and an MDF plank or piece of hard cardboard. Some weeks ago, while I was thinking about this molding series, I decided to sculpt my own shingles and stone wall originals to save me time in this painful craft. That way, I could put much effort in details one time, and then I could replicate the sculpted items quite easily. In this case, I'm going to create a mold out of the shingles sculpture. The first step of the process is to prepare our original, for which we need to create a frame. I start by covering the MDF piece with a plastic sheet and then glue our original to it facing up with little silicone so it stays in place. I then start adding some popsicle sticks to the sides to create the frame. For this step, you can also use some cardboard pieces instead. The height of the walls depends on the original piece's height, and in this case, the popsicle's width is enough, around 1 centimeter. Make sure to leave around 1 centimeter or so around the sides. With this, our original piece is prepared for the mold. We can now proceed with preparing our rubber mix. As mentioned, this molding option consists of a main component A, the rubber, and a component B, which acts as the accelerant that starts the chemical reaction and hardens the rubber. The proportion on which you need to mix both components is usually displayed in the product's specifications. For the one that I got at a local industrial resins shop, it is based on weight, as usual, and the proportion is 1000 grams or 1 kilogram of component A and 40 grams or 0.04 kilograms of component B. In case your product comes with a density value, which for me it did not, in theory you could also calculate the proportions using volume instead of weight, and then avoiding the use of a scale. But I did some research and it seems this approach usually leads to bad results in the proportions and the mold ends up not curing properly. So I decided to do things by the book and had to get me a digital scale. It is, in the end, a worthy investment if you think about it as a long-term tool. The amount of mix you'll need for your piece is not exactly easy to estimate since it depends on the volume of the original piece and on the density of the components, which we don't have. So my suggestion is to just eyeball it in excess so you don't have to prepare extra mix during the molding process. Don't worry if this happens though, as the mix gives you time to do so before curing. I'm going to set the scale in 0 and then proceed to place a cup on it where we'll start pouring the rubber or component A. I'm here using a small piece of paper to protect the scale in case I drop any rubber on it. We then remove both steering tool and paper and take note of the weight of component A added. Don't worry about the cup's weight as it's super light. And proceed to calculate how much component B will need. In our example, it is 86.3 multiplied by 40 and then divided by 1000, which gives us 3.45 grams of accelerant. Make sure to check the specifications on your product for this calculation. We then reset the scale back to 0 and use a syringe to add the component B. This one doesn't need to be super exact, so as you see, I added 3.6 grams. We can remove all tools used and proceed to mix both components. Do it gently at first so the accelerant doesn't splash out, and once it's incorporated into the rubber, do so more energically. Make sure you cover the cup's bottom corners so both components are well mixed, and continue for 1 or 2 minutes. Then we can proceed to pour the mix over our original piece. Start with a thin string over the corners and recesses, and then proceed to the center. You can then help yourself with a popsicle stick to cover the entire surface. As you see, I actually ran short of the mix, so had to prepare more during the process. The mix doesn't cure so quickly though, so you have time to do so if needed. Once fully poured, I grabbed the MDF base and tapped it to the table a couple of times to remove bubbles. With this, our mold is finished and we can leave it to sit and harden for 1 or 2 days. After that, we can proceed with unmolding. We first remove the mold from the MDF base and then the plastic sheet from the mold. We then start taking out our frame. You can see that some rubber went below the MDF, so we cut the excess with a blade around the borders. We also clean the mold a bit with some scissors. Proceeding now to remove the rubber, we start by gently pulling the edges and then pulling the rubber from the original. As with the glue gun molding option covered in video number 3, don't pull it too hard or you'll rip the rubber. Rather do it in short pulls and let the rubber itself do the work. This material is very flexible and does not stick to the originals, but since it gets in all recesses very easily, which we definitely want in order to get all details, sometimes it takes a little bit of time to unmold it. We can see now our result and compare the mold with the original piece. Here you can see other items created molds for like a stone wall, some barrels, chests, some cartwheels, and a homemade door. Let's go then through these molding option features. We can consider the process to have some medium difficulty if we compare it to the other options covered in the series, but nothing really complex. It could get messy if you spill some rubber or accelerant, so try to be thorough in the process and have enough working space not to drop the components or the mixing cup. As covered, the process requires some steps and there is some curing time, though in most cases the rubber hardens only after a couple of hours on the same day. The final mold has great durability, so you can reuse it as many times as needed, and its flexibility makes it very easy to unmold the pieces from it. It holds the best detail, though the components have some cost and you need to get a digital scale. Bottom line, my suggestion is that if you can cover the cost for this option, then it's definitely the best one of the three of the series. Mainly for repetitive and scalable objects like barrels, walls, shingles, chests, or even tiles that you would otherwise need to craft pretty often. The need to go through the whole process also makes it mostly suitable for big pieces. And you can batch objects in a single mold, as I did with the chest and barrels, in order to save money and materials. In future videos, we're going to use different materials to duplicate the items that we created molds for with each of the options in this series. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel not to miss those, and we're going to review their advantages. As always, if you liked the video, hit the like button and leave your comments below. See you in the next craft.